The morning sun rose over New Meridian like it had for the past 3 months, but there was no peace in its golden light. Park Hyun-woo stood at the reinforced windows of the command center, watching black smoke rise from what used to be the Eastern Mining District. His coffee had gone cold hours ago, but he couldn't bring himself to look away from the destruction. "Another shuttle is requesting immediate departure clearance," came the voice of Communications Officer Lee Jae-min from behind him. The young man's hands shook as he operated the console, and Hyun-woo couldn't blame him. They were all running on fear and caffeine now. "Granted," Hyun-woo said without turning around. "How many does that make today?" 17, sir. We're down to less than 300 people on the entire planet." 300. New Meridian had been home to 50,000 colonists just 3 months ago. Families, miners, scientists, children, who had never known any home but this red-soiled world with its twin moons and crystal-clear lakes. Now, it was a graveyard. The nightmare had begun with what should have been a routine rescue operation. Long-range sensors had detected the massive Zephyrian dreadnought as it limped through their system, trailing debris and emergency signals. The ship was dying, its crew sending desperate pleas for help in broken Federation standard. Hyun-woo had authorized the rescue mission himself. Captain No Sung-won had taken the colony's fastest ship with a full medical team, expecting to find wounded aliens in need of assistance. Instead, they had found something that still haunted Hyun-woo's dreams. The dreadnought's crew was dead. All of them. But the ship's biocontainment systems had failed, and something had escaped. Something that the Zephyrians had been transporting in their deepest, most secure holding cells. "Sir, we've lost contact with Mining Station 7. Lieutenant Kim Sora's voice cut through his memories. She was trying to keep her voice steady, but Hyun-woo could hear the fear underneath. Sora had been one of his best officers, calm under pressure and unshakable in a crisis. But 3 months of this had worn them all down to the bone. "When did we last hear from them?" Hyun-woo asked, already knowing the answer would be bad. 23 minutes ago. They reported movement in the southern tunnels. Then Sora swallowed hard, then screaming, "Sir?" Just screaming. Hyun-woo closed his eyes. Station 7 housed 42 miners and their families. Good people who had come to New Meridian to build a better life, to carve prosperity from the planet's rich mineral deposits. Now they were probably dead or worse. The creature had a pattern. It would appear at a settlement or mining station, always at the worst possible moment. It seemed to enjoy the hunt, taking its time to terrorize its victims before moving in for the kill. The thing was smart, tactical, learning from each encounter. "Show me the last surveillance footage from Station 7, Hyun-woo ordered. The main screen flickered to life, displaying grainy images from the mining station's security cameras. At first, everything looked normal. Miners heading to their shifts, children playing in the common areas, the everyday bustle of a working community. Then the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, casting everything in hellish red. The camera shook as something massive impacted. The building? Workers ran in panic, their screams audible even through the poor audio quality. Then, in the corner of the screen, shadow moved. The Warbeast emerged from the darkness like something from humanity's oldest nightmares. 15 feet of bioengineered death, its chitinous hide gleaming like black metal in the emergency lights. Its limbs moved with terrible grace, each step calculated and purposeful. The creature's head turned toward the camera, and for a moment, Hyun-woo found himself staring into eyes that burned with alien intelligence. The beast's mouth opened, revealing rows of teeth that could bite through steel. Its roar shattered the camera's audio pickup, leaving only static. Then the feed went dead. "That's the clearest footage we've gotten yet," Sora whispered. Hyun-woo had seen the beast in person only once, during its attack on the main colony 3 weeks ago. He had been in the residential district when the creature appeared, moving through the streets like a force of nature. Plasma rifles couldn't penetrate its hide, explosives barely scratched it, and when they did manage to wound it, the damage. Healed within hours, the thing's roar echoed across the valley now, a sound that made veteran miners weep and seasoned security guards abandon their posts. It was a sound that spoke of death and hopelessness, of a predator that had never known defeat. "Sir, another distress signal?" Lee Jae-min called out. This one's from the agricultural domes. Haiyan felt his heart sink. The agricultural domes were where they grew food for the colony, where families lived in small communities, surrounded by green fields under protective barriers. Children played there while their parents worked the soil that would feed New Meridian. "How many people?" he asked. 67, sir, including 15 children." The command center fell silent except for the hum of computers and the distant sound of another evacuation shuttle launching. Wei Yanwu stared at the tactical display, watching the red dot that represented the Warbeast moving steadily toward the agricultural sector. New Meridian was dying. Humanity seemed powerless to stop it. The Federation's response came like thunder across the stars. When the distress signals from New Meridian reached Earth, the military machine that had conquered half the galaxy roared to life. Within 48 hours, the pride of humanity's armed forces was burning through hyperspace toward the besieged. Colony Colonel Li Dongmin stood on the bridge of the assault carrier Indomitable, watching the red planet grow larger on the view screen. Behind him, 200 of the Federation's finest warriors prepared for battle. The 7th Orbital Marines had never known defeat. They had broken alien fortresses on ice worlds, fought robot armies in the asteroid belts, and crushed rebellions. On a dozen different planets, "Sir, we're receiving updates from the surface," reported his aide, Lieutenant Park Jinwoo. "The creature has destroyed 6 more settlements in the past week." Dongmin nodded grimly. The reports made for grim reading, but he had faced worse odds before. The crystalline hive on Proxima B had seemed unstoppable too, until his Marines found their weakness. Every enemy had one. "Prep the drop pods," he ordered. Plasma rifles, heavy armor, and enough firepower to level a city block. The drop began at dawn. 200 armored figures fell from the sky like metal meteors, their exosuits gleaming in the morning light. Each Marine carried weapons that could punch through starship holes, wore armor that could withstand plasma cannons, and had training that made them walking weapons of war. They landed in perfect formation, around the creature's last known position. Dongmin felt the familiar rush of adrenaline as his boots touched alien soil. This was what he lived for: the hunt, the fight. The moment when superior human tactics and technology proved their worth against whatever the galaxy could throw at them. The Warbeast appeared without warning. One moment Dongmin was coordinating his squads across the valley. Floor the next, something the size of a small building was tearing through his formation like it was made of paper dolls. The creature moved with impossible speed, its claws shearing through military-grade armor like it was cloth. "All units, concentrate fire," Dongmin shouted into his cum, but his words were lost in the chaos. Marines were screaming, their sophisticated weapons useless against the beast's hide. Plasma bolts that could melt steel barely singed its chitinous armor. The creature grabbed Sergeant Kim Woo-jin in its massive claws and threw him 100 meters into a rock formation. The impact crater was 3 feet deep. Private Hong Soo-jin tried to retreat, but the beast was faster, its tail whipping around to catch him in mid-dash flight. Dong-Min activated his suit's emergency boosters and launched himself at the creature's head, his plasma rifle charging to maximum power. The beast caught him in midair with casual ease, its burning eyes studying him with cold intelligence. Then it squeezed. The colonel's last transmission was a warning: "Fall back, fall back. It's learning our tactics." The Psychors arrived 3 days later, their sleek black ships cutting through the atmosphere like knives. These weren't ordinary soldiers. They were humanity's answer to the strange mental powers that some alien species possessed. Captain Yoon Ji-hai had dominated the minds of rebel leaders, turned enemy commanders into allies, and broken the will of entire armies without firing a shot. She stood on the ridge overlooking the valley where the Marines had fallen. Her team of 12 telepaths arranged in a perfect circle around her, their minds linked together, creating a psychic network that could crush the thoughts of any living creature. "Begin the assault," Ji-hai whispered, her consciousness reaching out across the battlefield. The mental attack hit the Warbeast like a tidal wave of pure will. Ji-hai felt her mind make contact with the creature's thoughts, expecting the usual moment of domination when an enemy's resistance crumbled. Instead, She found herself staring into an alien storm of programmed violence. The beast's mind was a fortress of bioengineered hatred. Every thought was a weapon, every memory a tool of war. The creature had been designed not just to kill, but to resist exactly this kind of mental intrusion. Jihai tried to push deeper, to find some weakness in the creature's psychic defenses. The Warbeast's consciousness pushed back. The feedback sent Jihai screaming to her knees, blood streaming from her nose and ears. Around her, the other telepaths collapsed one by one, their minds shattered by contact with something that had been built to be immune to their greatest weapon. Impossible, Jihai gasped before unconsciousness took her. It's immune to everything. The creature's roar echoed across the valley. This time there was something new in the sound: amusement. When news of the Psycorps' failure reached Federation Command, they sent their greatest hero. General Kong Minho had led the charge. That broke the Titan Rebellion, personally killing the cyborg warlord who had terrorized the outer colonies for 5 years. His medals covered half his chest, and his reputation preceded him wherever he went. He came to New Meridian alone. The duel took place at sunset in the ruins of Mining Station 7. Minho stood in his ceremonial armor, a blade of pure energy crackling in his hands. The weapon had been forged from the heart of a dying star, and it had never failed to cut through whatever stood in his way. The Warbeast emerged from the shadows like death itself, its massive form moving with predatory grace. For a moment, the two warriors studied each other across the broken ground. Then Minho charged. The general was faster than any human had a right to be, his augmented reflexes pushing him beyond the limits of normal flesh. His energy blade carved burning arcs through the air, each strike precise and deadly. The creature was faster. The beast's claws caught Minho mid-strike, lifting him off the ground. The general's armor, forged from the strongest alloys in known space, crumpled like tinfoil. His energy blade flickered and died as the creature's grip tightened. Learn from this, Minho gasped with his last breath. It adapts. It grows stronger with each fight. The Warbeast dropped the general's body and let out another roar, this one carrying a note of triumph. It had faced humanity's best and found. Them wanting Admiral Choi Haijin sat in the Federation's Emergency Council chamber, staring at the tactical displays that showed the extent of their failure. Around her, the greatest military minds in human space struggled to comprehend what they had witnessed. The creature doesn't just defeat our forces, she said quietly. It learns from them. Every tactic we use, every weapon we deploy, it adapts and grows stronger. Our plasma weapons taught it to harden its hide. Our telepaths showed it how to shield its mind. Our greatest warrior demonstrated the limits of human skill. The room fell silent. These were people who had conquered star systems, who had built an empire that spanned light years. They had never encountered a problem that couldn't be solved with superior firepower and human ingenuity. What are you suggesting, Admiral? Asked Defense Minister Yang Taeho. Orbital bombardment, Haijin replied. We evacuate the remaining civilians and glass the entire surface. It's the only way to be certain. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. New Meridian had been humanity's hope, a world where families could build new lives among the stars. Now they were talking about turning it into a ball of molten rock. There has to be another way, someone protested, but the Admiral shook her head. We've tried everything. Our finest soldiers, our most advanced weapons, our greatest heroes. Nothing works. The creature was designed to be the perfect weapon, and it's succeeding. She looked around the room at faces that had never known true defeat. Sometimes brute force and superior technology aren't enough. For the first time in Federation history, humanity's military machine had met something it couldn't defeat. The Warbeast had proven that even the greatest empire in the galaxy could be brought low by a single, perfectly designed predator. The order for orbital bombardment was signed that night. But before the fleet could move into position, something incredible happened. Something that would change everything they thought they knew about the creature, about warfare, and about the power of the human spirit. It started with a single word from a 7-year-old girl. The bunker's lights flickered as another explosion rocked the surface above them. Dr. Seo Minyun tightened her arms around her daughter. feeling the 7-year-old's small body trembling against her chest. The Colonial Archives had been converted into an emergency shelter 3 weeks ago. When it became clear that nowhere on New Meridian was truly safe, around them, the last remnants of the colony's population huddled in makeshift beds and sleeping bags. Families who had once lived in comfortable homes now shared cramped spaces between towering shelves of data storage units. The air recyclers hummed constantly, struggling to keep the atmosphere breathable for the 43 people who remained. "Mama, look at this one," little Nari whispered, holding up her tablet. The screen showed a massive German shepherd running through a field, its tongue lolling out in pure joy. "He's so happy. Why can't the big doggy up there be happy like this?" Minyoung glanced at the tablet, expecting to see another children's cartoon. Instead, she found herself watching Earth Archive's footage of domestic animals. Her daughter had been obsessed with these old documentaries for weeks, ever since the attacks began. While other children cried and had nightmares, Nari seemed fascinated by the relationship between humans and their ancient companions. "Sweetheart, the creature up there isn't really a dog," Minyoung said softly, but something in the footage made her pause. The German shepherd on screen was demonstrating obedience training, sitting on command, healing perfectly beside its handler. "But it acts like one," Nari insisted, with the stubborn logic that only children possessed. "Watch, Mama." She swiped to another video, this one showing security footage of the Warbeast's latest attack. "See how it marks its territory? And how it circles before it attacks? That's what the wolf documentary said they do." Minyoung's scientific mind began to race. As a xenobiologist, she had studied dozens of alien species, but she had never really analyzed the Warbeast's behavior patterns. Everyone was too focused on its destructive capabilities, its apparent intelligence, its resistance to their weapons. But Nari was right. The creature's movements, its territorial behavior, even its hunting patterns were hauntingly familiar. "Me more," Minyoung said, taking the tablet from her daughter. The footage was horrifying. But now she watched it with new eyes. The Warbeast didn't just kill randomly. It established territory, marked boundaries, and showed clear pack behavior, even though it was alone. When it encountered groups of humans, it would circle them, testing their responses before attacking. It even displayed what looked like play behavior, batting at vehicles and structures before destroying them. "It's exhibiting classic canine behavioral patterns," Minyoung whispered to herself. "But that's impossible. The Zephyrians are reptilian. They don't have mammalian companions." She pulled up her research files on the tablet, cross-referencing biological data they had managed to gather from the creature's attacks. Hair samples, tissue fragments, even saliva from its victims had been analyzed. The results had been confusing. At the time, showing genetic markers that didn't match any known Zephyrian bioengineering techniques. But if she looked at it differently, if she considered the possibility that the creature wasn't purely Zephyrian— "Mama, the man on the video said something important," Nari said, tugging on her sleeve. "He said that dogs want to please their pack leaders. They need someone to tell them what to do, or they get confused and scared." Minyoung looked at her daughter with new respect. While the greatest military minds in the galaxy had focused on defeating the creature through force, a 7-year-old had identified something they had all missed. The Warbeast wasn't just a weapon. It was a frightened animal that had been twisted into something monstrous. "Show me the part about pack leadership," Minyoung said urgently. The documentary explained how domestic dogs had evolved alongside humans for thousands of years, developing an instinctive need for pack structure and leadership. Guidance. Even the gentlest dog could become aggressive and destructive. The trainer on screen demonstrated how clear, confident commands could calm even the most agitated animal. "But Mama, why would the aliens use Earth animals to make their weapon?" Nari asked. Minyoung's blood ran cold as the implications hit her. "Because they found something they thought they could improve," she whispered. "The Zephyrians must have discovered Earth's domestic animals and seen their potential for bioengineering. They took creatures that had evolved to serve humans and turned them into weapons." The tablet showed another video, this one of a massive mastiff that had been rescued from a fighting ring. The dog was aggressive, dangerous, seemingly beyond redemption. But with patience and proper training, it had been transformed into a gentle giant that played with children. The trainer said the dog wasn't bad, Nari observed. It just needed someone to show it how to be good. Before Min-young could respond, the bunker's emergency lights flashed red. The automated defense systems began their final warning sequence, their mechanical voices echoing through the shelter. Hull breach detected. All personnel to emergency positions. This is not a drill. Panic spread through the survivors like wildfire. Parents grabbed their children, elderly colonists struggled to their feet. The few remaining security personnel checked their weapons with grim determination. They all knew what the warning meant. The Warbeast had finally found them. It's following our scent, whispered engineer Park Sung-ho, his face pale with terror. The ventilation systems must have carried it down here. Min-young looked around at the terrified faces surrounding her. These were good people, families who had come to New Meridian to build a better life. Now they were trapped in a metal tomb, waiting for death to find them. The sound of claws scraping against metal echoed through the corridors above them. The creature was in the facility, methodically working its way through the levels. Each impact sent vibrations through the floor, and the lights flickered with every step the beast took. "Mama, I'm scared," Nari whispered, but her eyes were still fixed on the tablet screen. The documentary was showing a section about alpha behavior, about how dogs responded to confident leadership even from the smallest humans. "I know, sweetheart," Min-young said, but her mind was still racing. If her theory was correct, if the Warbeast was based on Earth animals, then it might still retain some of those fundamental instincts. The creature had been engineered to be a weapon, but underneath all that biomodification might still be a confused animal looking for its pack. The scraping sounds grew louder. The beast was getting closer, following the scent trail that would lead it directly to their shelter. In minutes, maybe seconds, it would break through their final defenses. "Mama Nari," said suddenly, her voice cutting through the panic around them. What if the big doggy isn't angry? What if it's just lost and scared like the dog in the video? Min-young looked at her daughter with a mixture of pride and terror. The child had identified something that had escaped everyone else, from Colonial administrators to Federation generals. But the revelation had come too late. The creature was almost upon them, and knowing why it acted like a predator didn't change the fact that it was still a 15-foot-tall killing machine. The bunker's main door began to buckle under repeated impacts. Metal screamed and sparked as claws that could cut through starship hulls tore through their last defense. Emergency klaxons wailed, and the smell of ozone filled the air from damaged electrical systems. "Everyone stay calm," Min-young called out. Though her own heart was racing, "Stay together, and whatever happens, don't run." Running triggers predator instincts. The door gave way with a sound like thunder, and the Warbeast filled the entrance like a nightmare given form. Its burning eyes swept across the cowering survivors, and its massive chest rose and fell with each breath. For a moment there was absolute silence except for the creature's rumbling growl. Then Nari did something that would change everything. She stepped forward, her small tablet still clutched in her hands, and looked up at the monster with the fearless curiosity that only a child could maintain in the face of certain death. The reinforced door exploded inward like it was made of paper, twisted metal flying through the air as the Warbeast forced its way into the bunker. The creature's massive form filled the entire entrance, its chitinous hide gleaming under the flickering emergency lights. Sparks showered down from damaged electrical systems, casting dancing shadows that made the beast look even more terrifying. 43. People pressed themselves against the far wall, their faces frozen in terror. Children buried their heads in their parents' arms, while adults stared at the creature with the helpless desperation of prey animals facing their predator. The air was thick with the smell of fear and ozone. The Warbeast's burning eyes swept across the survivors, its massive head turning slowly as it studied each face. Its breath came in deep, rumbling growls that seemed to vibrate through the floor itself. The saliva dripped from its fanged maw, sizzling where it hit the metal deck. Plates. Dr. Min-young felt her heart stop as she watched her daughter step forward. Nari moved with the casual confidence of a child who had never learned to be afraid of big dogs, her small tablet still clutched in one hand. "Nari, no." Min-young screamed, lunging forward to grab her daughter. but Engineer Park Seung-ho caught her arm, his grip like iron. "Don't move," he whispered urgently. Any sudden movement might trigger it to attack everyone. The beast's attention focused on the small figure walking toward it. Its head lowered, bringing those burning eyes level with Nari's face. The creature's nostrils flared as it scented the air around her, and its lips pulled back to reveal teeth that could bite through steel. The survivors held their breath. Some closed their eyes, unable to watch what they were certain would be a child's death. Others stared in horrified fascination as the 7-year-old girl approached the galaxy's most feared predator. The Warbeast raised its massive clawed appendage, each talon longer than Nari's entire arm. The limb trembled with barely contained violence, and for a moment it seemed like the creature was fighting some internal battle. Its eyes flickered between the burning rage that had driven it to destroy everything in its path and something else. Something confused and lost. Nari stopped just out of reach of those deadly claws and tilted her head back to look up at the monster. 8. She showed no fear, no panic, no recognition of the danger she was in. Instead, she studied the creature with the same curious interest she had shown while watching her animal documentaries. "You're really big," she said conversationally, as if she were talking to a neighborhood dog. "But you're scared, aren't you? You don't know what you're supposed to do." The Warbeast's growl deepened, but something in its posture changed. The rigid aggression seemed to waver, like a machine trying to process conflicting programming. Its clawed appendage remained raised, but the trembling increased. Nari glanced back at her mother, then at the tablet in her hand. On the screen, the animal documentary was still playing, showing a trainer working with a massive, aggressive dog. The trainer's voice was calm, confident, absolutely certain that the animal would obey. "You need someone to tell you what to do," Nari said, turning back to the creature. "All dogs do. Even really big ones like you." The beast's breathing became more rapid, its chest rising and falling like a bellows. Those burning eyes fixed on Nari's face, and for the first time since it had emerged from the crashed alien ship, the creature seemed to be truly seeing rather than simply hunting. Minyoung watched in amazement as her daughter raised her small hand, palm outward, just like the trainer in the documentary. Adi's voice carried across the bunker with crystalline clarity, cutting through the emergency alarms and the creature's rumbling growls. "Sit." The word hung in the air like a challenge to the laws of physics. It carried no magical power, no advanced technology, no psionic energy that the Federation's telepaths might have wielded. It was simply spoken with the complete confidence of a child who had watched dozens of documentaries and had never doubted that dogs should obey when properly commanded. The Warbeast froze, as if struck by lightning. Its raised claw trembled violently, and its burning eyes widened with what could only be described as shock. The creature's massive head turned slightly, as if it were hearing something it had never heard before but somehow recognized. Deep within the beast's bioengineered brain, two sets of programming warred against each other. The Zephyrian military conditioning screamed for violence, for the destruction of all humans, the completion of its mission to terrorize and kill. But underneath that artificial programming, something older and deeper stirred to life. The creature's genetic foundation was built on Earth's domestic animals, creatures that had evolved alongside humans for thousands of years. The Zephyrians had thought they could simply overlay their weapon programming on top of that foundation. But they had underestimated the power of millions of years of evolution. The instinct to respond to human authority was coded into every cell of the creature's body. "Sit," Nari repeated, her voice even more confident now. She had seen the confusion in the creature's eyes, the moment when its aggression wavered. Good dogs sit when they're told. The Warbeast's internal struggle was visible on its alien features. Its claws flexed and unflexed, its breathing became ragged. Its eyes flickered between the burning rage that had driven it for months and something else entirely. Something that looked almost like hope. The survivors watched in stunned silence as the 15-foot killing machine began to lower itself. The movement was awkward, uncertain, as if the creature were remembering how to do something it had never been taught, but somehow knew. Its powerful legs bent, its massive body settled toward the floor, and its tail, appendage that could smash through concrete, curled around its feet. It was a crude approximation of sitting, more like a controlled collapse than the neat posture of a trained animal, but it was unmistakably an attempt to obey the command. "Holy stars," whispered Dr. Kim Yan-soo, the colony's chief medical officer. "It actually did it. The creature is sitting." The Warbeast's burning eyes remained fixed on Nari's face, and now there was something new in that gaze. The mindless fury had been replaced by confusion, uncertainty, and what might have been a desperate need for guidance. The creature made a sound that was part growl, part whimper, like a massive dog that had been lost in the woods and finally found its way home. Nari smiled, the same gentle smile she gave to every animal she met. "Good boy," she said softly. "You're a good boy, aren't you? You just needed someone to tell you what to do." The creature's breathing slowed and its massive form relaxed slightly. The first time since it had emerged from the alien wreckage, the Warbeast looked like something other than a weapon of mass destruction. It looked like what it had always been underneath the bioengineering and military conditioning. A confused, frightened animal that had been twisted into something it was never meant to be. Minyoung felt tears streaming down her face as she watched. Her daughter accomplished what the Federation's greatest heroes had failed to do. Not through violence or superior technology, but through the simple recognition that sometimes the most powerful weapon in the universe was understanding. The galaxy's most feared predator had been defeated by a 7-year-old girl who understood that every dog, no matter how big or scary, just wanted to be a good boy. Nari stepped forward with the quiet confidence of a child who had never met a dog she couldn't befriend. The other survivors watched in breathless silence as her small hand extended toward the creature's massive snout. The Warbeast could have snapped her up in one bite, could have crushed her with a single claw. But instead it remained perfectly still. Her fingers touched the scarred chitinous hide. Something extraordinary happened. The creature's burning eyes closed slowly, like a cat being petted for the first time. Its breathing, which had been harsh and aggressive, began to slow and deepen. The rumbling growls that had terrified an entire planet faded into something that almost sounded like purring. "Good boy," Nari whispered, her voice carrying the same gentle tone she used with every animal she met. "You're such a good boy. You just needed someone to understand you." The Warbeast's eyes opened again, but the fury was gone. In its place was something that looked heartbreakingly like gratitude. The creature lowered its massive head further, pressing its snout gently against Nari's palm. Motion was careful, controlled, as if the beast were afraid it might accidentally hurt the small human who had shown it kindness. Dr. Minyoung felt her world shift as she watched the interaction. Her scientific mind raced through the implications of what she was witnessing. The creature's behavior, its response to human commands, its obvious need for pack structure, it all pointed to one incredible conclusion. They used Earth DNA. She breathed, speaking to herself as much as to the stunned survivors around her. The Zephyrians found our domestic animals and used them as the foundation for their weapon. Engineer Park Seung-ho stared at her in disbelief. "That's impossible. Earth's location is classified. No alien species has ever found our homeworld. We didn't need to find Earth," Minyoung explained, her voice growing stronger as the pieces fell into place. "They found one of our colony ships. Maybe a derelict, maybe a crash site. They discovered creatures that had been bred for thousands of years to work alongside humans, and they thought they could weaponize that bond." The implications were staggering. For millennia, humans had shaped the evolution of their animal companions, creating creatures that were hardwired to seek human approval, follow human commands, to find purpose in serving their human pack. The Zephyrians had amplified the physical capabilities of these creatures, but they couldn't erase millions of years of genetic programming that made them want to be good boys and girls. Over the following days, as Federation ships approached the planet, expecting to find a battlefield, they instead discovered something that would rewrite military doctrine across the galaxy. Nari had become the creature's handler, teaching it basic commands with the patience of someone who had never doubted that any dog could be trained. "Stay," she would say, and the 15-foot monster would freeze in place, its tail wagging in a way that shook nearby buildings. "Come," she would call, and the creature would bound toward her with the enthusiasm of a puppy. Though each step left crater-sized footprints in the ground, the most remarkable command was heel. The beast would position itself beside Nari, matching her pace perfectly as they walked through the ruins of New Meridian. The creature that had terrorized an entire planet now followed a 7-year-old girl like a faithful companion, its burning eyes constantly watching her face for the next command. Dr. Kim Yan-soo, the colony's chief medical officer, took regular readings of the creature's biosigns. "It's incredible," she reported to the Federation scientists who had arrived to study the phenomenon. "The creature's brain chemistry is completely different from when it was aggressive. Stress hormones are down 90%. Cortisol levels are normal. It's like watching a completely different animal." The Warbeast's pack-bonding instincts had fully activated. It recognized Nari as its alpha, the leader of its pack of one. The creature would bring her gifts, twisted pieces of metal that it had carefully shaped with its claws, or interesting rocks that it had found during its explorations. It would lie down beside her when she napped, its massive body curled protectively around her small form. Admiral Choi Hai-jin arrived on the third day, expecting to oversee the creature's destruction. Instead, she found herself watching Nari teach the beast to fetch. The child had found a metal rod about the size of a baseball bat, and she threw it with all her strength. The creature bounded after it with obvious joy, its massive form shaking the ground with each step. "Fetch is important," Nari explained seriously to the Admiral. "Dogs need to have a job to do, or they get bored and start chewing furniture." "Well, this one would probably chew buildings, so we need to keep him busy," the creature returned with the rod, dropping it gently at Nari's feet before sitting and waiting patiently for her to throw it again. Its tail wagged so hard that it carved a groove in the ground behind it. "This changes everything," the Admiral murmured, watching the display. "If this creature was built on Earth animal DNA, then other species might have tried the same thing. We could be facing bioweapons based on our own companions across the galaxy." But Min Young shook her head. "You're missing the point. This isn't a problem, it's our greatest advantage. No matter how much they modify our animals, they can't erase the fundamental truth. These creatures want to serve humans. They're hardwired to be our allies." The evacuation ships that had fled New Meridian began to return, their passengers staring in amazement at the transformed creature. Children who had nightmares about the monster now giggled as they watched it play fetch with Nari. Parents who had lost everything to the creature's rampage found themselves oddly comforted by the sight of their children teaching it tricks. The Federation spent decades developing weapons to fight alien threats, Min Young observed as she watched Nari demonstrate how to make the creature roll over. "But we already had the most powerful weapon in the universe. Our ability to turn enemies into friends, predators into protectors." The Warbeast story spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Humanity's reputation changed overnight from a young, technologically inferior species to something far more impressive, a species that could tame the untamable, that could find the spark of goodness even in the most terrifying weapons. Other alien species began to study the relationship between humans and their animal companions with new respect. The bond that had begun in prehistoric caves, when the first wolf decided to share a human's fire, had become humanity's secret weapon. In the stars, as the sun set over New Meridian, Nari sat in the ruins of what had once been the main colony, her new friend lying beside her. The creature's massive head rested on her lap, and its eyes were closed in contentment. In the distance, construction crews worked to rebuild what had been destroyed. But now they worked under the protection of the galaxy's most feared predator. "You're not a weapon," Nari whispered to the creature, scratching behind where its ears would be if it had any. "You're just a really, really big dog who got lost and scared. But you're home now? We're a good boy? And you're home?" The Warbeast's eyes opened slightly, and in their depths was something that no military engineer had ever intended to create: love, loyalty, and the ancient bond between human and animal that had survived across the stars. The Zephyrians had tried to build the perfect weapon, but they had forgotten the most important lesson in the universe. Any creature built on the foundation of humanity's oldest friends would always, eventually, choose to be a good boy. The end.